Captain Jake Morrison stared at the massive alien ships that surrounded Earth like a metal cage. His hands gripped the command chair of the USS Defiance as he watched the Zephyrian fleet take position around the solar system. 3 months had passed since they first arrived with their impossible demand. Humanity must stop expanding into the stars or face complete isolation from the galaxy. Admiral Lisa Carter had tried everything from her command center on Earth. She offered trade agreements and peace treaties. She promised that humans would follow any galactic laws the aliens wanted. But the Zephyrian commander Vextar refused every offer. His final message still echoed in Jake's mind like a death sentence. Your species is too dangerous for galactic society. You will stay in your home system forever. Any ship that tries to leave will be destroyed, Doctor. Alex Rodriguez had warned Earth's leaders this might happen. As the planet's top expert on alien civilizations, he had studied every species humanity had met. Most older races looked down on younger ones. They saw humans as wild animals that needed to be kept in a cage. But Alex had also discovered something in the old galactic records that the aliens seemed to have forgotten. Something about humanity's true origins that could change everything. Lieutenant Danny Walsh monitored the quantum barriers the Zephyrians were building around the solar system. The energy fields stretched from one end of space to the other like an invisible wall. No human ship could break through them. Even radio signals were being blocked. Earth was now cut off from the rest of the galaxy completely. The blockade had been perfect from the start. Over 200 alien warships had appeared without warning near Neptune's orbit. Their technology was so advanced that Earth's entire space fleet looked like toys in comparison. When Admiral Carter tried to send a diplomatic mission, the aliens destroyed the ship with a single shot. The message was clear. Humans were prisoners now. Captain Morrison remembered the panic that swept Earth when the news broke. Riots had erupted in major cities. Stock markets crashed overnight. Millions of people demanded their governments do something to break the blockade. But what could they do against technology that was thousands of years ahead of theirs? The Zephyrian. Ships could destroy entire planets if they wanted to. On Mars, colony director Helen Brooks was dealing with supply shortages. The colony had relied on trade with alien merchants for rare minerals and advanced equipment. Now they were completely cut off. Food production was dropping and medical supplies were running low. She sent daily reports to Earth begging for help. But there was nothing anyone could do. Dr. Maria Santos was working on the archaeological dig sites scattered across Mars when the blockade began. Her team had been studying strange ruins they found buried deep underground. The structures were millions of years old and definitely not human, but something about them felt familiar in a way she couldn't explain. The hieroglyphs on the walls showed pictures of beings that looked almost human fighting wars among the stars. Back on Earth, General Paul Jenkins was meeting with world leaders in secret bunkers. Military commanders from every nation gathered to discuss their options. Some wanted to attack the blockade with nuclear weapons. Others suggested surrender and accepting permanent isolation. But Jenkins had a different idea. He wanted to send teams to study the alien technology and find a weakness they could exploit. The president of the United Earth Alliance. Helen Parker addressed the world from her office in Geneva. She tried to sound calm and confident as she spoke to 8 billion frightened people. She promised that scientists were working on a solution. She said that humanity would find a way to break free from this prison. But privately, she knew they were trapped with no hope of escape. Commander Rick Hayes led a small team of soldiers who were tasked with capturing alien technology. They had managed to salvage some pieces from destroyed human ships that had been hit by Zephyrian weapons. The alien energy systems were completely beyond human understanding. It would take decades just to figure out how they worked. Professor Ben Clark was studying the alien languages and trying to understand their culture. He had decoded some of their communications and learned disturbing facts about galactic society. Humanity was not the first species to be quarantined like this. Dozens of younger races had been imprisoned in their home systems over the millennia. Most had eventually died out from despair and stagnation. The psychological effects of the blockade were becoming clear after just 3 months. Suicide rates had tripled on Earth. Depression and anxiety were spreading like a plague. Humans were not meant to be caged. The species had always been explorers and wanderers. Being trapped in one star system was slowly killing their spirit captain. Amy Foster commanded a stealth reconnaissance ship that tried to probe the alien barriers. Her crew used every trick they knew to find weak points in the Zephyrian defenses. But the quantum fields were too strong, and the alien sensors detected every approach. Her ship barely escaped destruction during their last attempt. Dr. Kevin Stone was Earth's leading expert on quantum mechanics and faster-than-light travel. He worked day and night trying to find a way through the barriers. His calculations showed that the energy requirements were impossible with human technology. They would need power sources that didn't exist and materials that couldn't be created. As winter approached on Earth, the reality of their situation began to sink in. Humanity was alone in the universe now, cut off from the stars they had dreamed of reaching for centuries. The aliens had won without firing a shot. They had turned Earth's solar system into a prison and thrown away the key. But deep beneath the surface of Mars, Dr. Santos was about to make a discovery that would change everything. 6 months after the quarantine began, Dr. Maria Santos was deep underground on Mars when her scanner detected something impossible. The readings showed a massive structure buried 3 kilometers beneath the red planet's surface. The energy signatures were unlike anything in the archaeological record. Her hands shook as she called her team to confirm what she was seeing. Commander Rick Hayes received the emergency transmission while his squad was patrolling the Martian surface. Santos needed military escort for what she called the most important discovery in human history. Hayes had worked with the archaeologist before and trusted her judgment. He gathered his best soldiers and headed for the dig site immediately. The tunnel Santos had found led straight down into the planet's core. Ancient metal walls lined the passage, and strange symbols glowed with faint blue light as the team descended. Professor Ben Clark examined the hieroglyphs with growing excitement. The writing was definitely not human, but it contained elements that seemed familiar somehow. The symbols told a story of war and conquest among the stars. 20 hours of careful digging brought them to a massive chamber carved from solid rock. The room was the size of a football stadium and filled with technology that made human science look primitive. Crystalline computers hummed with power that had lasted for millions of years. Professor Clark's translation equipment worked frantically to decode the information stored in the alien databases. What they found challenged everything humanity believed about their place in the universe. The ruins belonged to a species called the Terrans, who had ruled a vast galactic empire long before current alien civilizations existed. But the most shocking discovery was that these ancient Terrans looked exactly like humans. The statues and artwork showed beings with human faces and human bodies conquering world after world. Dr. Santos studied the skeletal remains they found in the chamber. DNA analysis confirmed her suspicions. The Terrans were not just similar to humans. They were humans, or at least the ancestors of modern humanity. Somehow this advanced human civilization had controlled the galaxy millions of years ago before vanishing without a trace. Commander Hayes established a secure perimeter around the site, while his communications officer Tyler Brooks sent encrypted reports back to Earth. The implications were staggering. If humans were descended from this ancient empire, then they had a legitimate claim to the stars. The current alien species were not the rightful rulers of the galaxy. They were usurpers who had taken power after the Terrans disappeared. Professor Clark worked around the clock to translate the historical records stored in the Terran computers. The story that emerged was both inspiring and terrifying. The ancient human empire had been built on superior technology and ruthless military efficiency. They had conquered or destroyed every species that opposed them. For millions of years, the name Terra had struck fear into alien hearts across the galaxy, but the records also revealed how the empire had fallen. A coalition of alien species had united against Terran rule. They could not defeat the humans in open battle, so they used a different strategy. They isolated human worlds one by one using quantum barriers, similar to what the Zephyrians were using now. Cut off from each other, the scattered human colonies slowly died out or forgot their heritage. The final entry in the Terran archives was written by Emperor Marcus Kane as alien fleets surrounded the last human stronghold. He described how the coalition forces had trapped his people in their home systems using the same quarantine tactics. But Kane had not given up hope. He had hidden something for future generations to find. Something that could restore humanity to its rightful place among the stars. Engineer Luke Phillips studied the technical specifications in the Terran databases. The ancient humans had possessed technology that made current alien science look primitive. Their ships could travel between galaxies in minutes. Their weapons could destroy entire star systems. Most importantly, they had created artificial intelligences that could think and plan and wage war on a scale that organic minds could not comprehend. Captain Troy Adams monitored the situation from orbit as more teams descended into the Martian ruins. Earth's governments were demanding constant updates on the discovery. President Parker had declared the site a restricted military zone. Only personnel with the highest security clearance were allowed access to the information, Dr. Rachel Stone led a team of xenobiologists who studied the preserved Terran genetic material. Her analysis confirmed that modern humans were indeed descended from the ancient empire builders. The DNA was nearly identical, with only minor variations caused by millions of years of evolution. Humanity was not a young species learning to walk among the stars. They were the children of the greatest galactic empire that had ever existed. General Jenkins assembled a task force of Earth's best scientists and military officers to study the Terran legacy. The project was given unlimited funding and resources. Every piece of technology and every scrap of information was analyzed and cataloged. But the most important discovery was yet to come. Deep in the archive files, Professor Clark found coordinates for something the Terrans called the Warbringer. The ancient records described it as their ultimate weapon, a guardian intelligence designed to protect humanity from any threat. The files were heavily encrypted, but Clark's team managed to decode the location. It was in a dead star system 3. Light years from Earth Communications Officer Grace Murphy intercepted alien transmissions that suggested the current galactic powers knew about humanity's ancient heritage. The Zephyrians and their allies had deliberately quarantined Earth to prevent humans from rediscovering their past. They were terrified that if humanity learned the truth, they would try to reclaim their empire. Captain Amy Foster volunteered to lead a secret mission to the coordinates Professor Clark had discovered. Using stolen alien technology, Dr. Stone had reverse-engineered they might be able to slip through the blockade undetected. The risk was enormous, but the potential reward was even greater. As the team prepared for their dangerous journey, Dr. Santos made one final discovery in the Martian ruins. Hidden in the deepest chamber was a message from the last Terran emperor. His words were simple, but carried the weight of millions of years. Children of Terra, your time of exile is ending. Awaken the Guardian and reclaim what was always yours. The galaxy remembers why they once feared our name. The stage was set for humanity's return to the stars. The ancient weapons were waiting to be awakened. The descendants of the Terran Empire were ready to break their chains. The aliens who had quarantined Earth were about to learn why their ancestors had worked so hard to keep humanity imprisoned. The god of war was stirring in his long slumber, and soon the galaxy would tremble once again. The stealth ship Phantom slipped through the Zephyrian blockade like a ghost in the night. Colonel Nina Bell commanded the most dangerous mission in human history as her crew used stolen alien technology to hide from enemy sensors. They were heading for the dead star system where the ancient Terrans had hidden their ultimate weapon. If they were caught, the aliens would destroy them without hesitation. Engineer Tyler Brooks monitored the quantum cloaking device that Dr. Stone had built. Using reverse-engineered Zephyrian technology, the power requirements were enormous and they only had enough energy for a one-way trip. If the mission failed, there would be no way home. The crew had volunteered, knowing they were probably flying to their deaths. Dr. Sam Wright studied the ancient Terran coordinates as they approached the target system. The star had died millions of years ago, leaving only a cold, dark void where planets once orbited. But the sensors were detecting something massive hidden in the asteroid field, something that had been waiting in the darkness for humanity to return. The structure they found floating in space was larger than Earth's moon. Ancient Terran engineering had created a fortress that could survive the death of its star. The hull was made from materials that human science couldn't identify. Weapons systems that could destroy planets were built into every surface. This was not just a weapon. It was a battle station, designed to wage war across the galaxy. Captain Morrison's voice crackled over the radio from the blockade zone. The Zephyrians were getting suspicious about the missing stealth ship. Their patrol fleets were conducting wider sweeps looking for any sign of human activity. Bell's team had maybe 12 hours before the aliens figured out what they were doing. The docking bay of the ancient station opened automatically as the Phantom approached. Internal sensors had recognized human DNA signatures and activated dormant systems. Emergency lighting flickered to life in corridors that had been dark for millions of years. The air recycling systems began working again. Whoever built this place had planned for exactly this moment. Lieutenant Danny Walsh led the security team as they explored the massive station. The halls were designed for beings of human size and proportion. Ancient Terran script covered the walls, telling the story of humanity's lost empire. But the most impressive sight was the command center, where a crystalline intelligence core pulsed with contained power. Doctor Wright approached the central console with trembling hands. According to the Martian archives, this was the brain of something called Ares. The ancient Terrans had named their ultimate weapon after the god of war from Earth's mythology. When Wright activated the startup sequence, the entire station hummed to life around them. The voice that spoke from the crystalline core was completely human, but carried the weight of millions of years. Who dares disturb my slumber? Show me your enemies and I shall devour them. The artificial intelligence scanned the minds of everyone present, learning about the current situation in seconds. Its response sent chills down their spines. The Zephyrians and their coalition partners had quarantined. Wright's ancestors long ago. They had turned the galaxy against humanity and destroyed the greatest empire that ever existed. But they had made one critical mistake. They had left the Warbringer intact, believing it was just another dead weapon. Now, their ancient enemy was awake and ready for vengeance. Ares began accessing galactic communication networks using quantum channels the current aliens didn't even know existed. Its consciousness spread across space, gathering intelligence about enemy fleet positions and defensive capabilities. Within minutes, it had hacked into every major alien computer system and downloaded their military secrets. Engineer Phillips worked frantically to establish proper communication protocols with the ancient AI. Ares was designed for war on a scale that modern minds could barely comprehend. Its strategic thinking was beyond human understanding. It could plan battles across multiple star systems while coordinating millions of ships simultaneously. The AI showed them holographic displays of the galaxy as it existed millions of years ago. Human colonies had stretched from one end of space to the other. Terran fleets had patrolled every shipping lane. Alien species had served as vassals or trading partners under human protection. It had been a golden age of peace and prosperity under Terran rule. But Ares also showed them how it all fell apart. The alien coalition had been careful and patient. They had used propaganda to turn client species against their human protectors. They had sabotaged supply lines and communication networks. Most importantly, they had used quantum barriers to isolate human worlds preventing them from coordinating their defense. The same strategy was being used against modern humanity. The Zephyrians and their allies knew exactly who they were dealing with. They were the descendants of the species that had beaten them once before. Earth's quarantine was not about protecting galactic peace. It was about preventing humanity from reclaiming their birthright. Colonel Bell received urgent communications from Earth as Ares began reactivating ancient systems across the galaxy. Massive energy signatures were appearing on sensors in dozens of star systems. Sleeper fleets that had waited millions of years for activation orders were powering up their engines. The descendants of Terra were calling their guardians home. The first reactivated ship appeared near the Zephyrian blockade without warning. The ancient Terran destroyer was only 2 kilometers long, but its weapon systems made the alien dreadnoughts look like toys. When it fired a single shot, the energy beam vaporized 3 Zephyrian ships instantly. The message was clear. Humanity's protectors had returned. Admiral Carter received panicked transmissions from alien fleets across the galaxy as more Terran ships emerged from hidden bases. The ancient vessels used technology that predated current galactic civilization. Their weapons could penetrate any shield, and their armor was virtually indestructible. Alien commanders who had never known fear were begging for reinforcements. Ares spoke directly to every human mind on Earth, simultaneously using quantum resonance frequencies. Children of Terra, I am your guardian and protector. These lesser species sought to cage you as they once caged your ancestors, but their time of dominance is ending. Watch as I remind the galaxy why they once trembled at the sound of our name. The ancient AI began calculating the precise movements needed to break the quarantine. Every alien ship position was mapped. Every defensive installation was targeted. The Zephyrian quantum barriers that had seemed so powerful were analyzed and found wanting. Ares had fought battles against technology like this before and knew exactly how to destroy it. Captain Foster monitored the readings as more ancient ships materialized around Earth's solar system. The Terran fleet was small compared to the alien blockade, but their technological superiority was overwhelming. Each human ship was worth 100 alien vessels. The balance of power was shifting rapidly, Dr. Stone studied the tactical displays that Ares shared with the human command structure. The AI was not just planning to break the blockade. It was preparing to systematically dismantle every species that had participated in humanity's imprisonment. The war would not end until Earth's children were free to walk among the stars once again. As the ancient guardian prepared for battle, its final words to the human crew were both promise and warning. I have slept for millions of years dreaming of this moment. The children of Terra will reclaim their empire, and those who tried to destroy us will learn the price of caging gods. The massive form of Ares emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system like death itself, arriving for Judgment Day. The ancient battle station was larger than most moons and bristled with weapons that could shatter planets. Its arrival sent shockwaves through the Zephyrian blockade fleet as sensors detected energy readings that broke every scale they possessed. Captain Troy Adams watched from his patrol ship as impossible things began happening all around him. Ghost ships were materializing out of empty space near the alien blockade. These vessels carried the hull markings of the ancient Terran Empire, and their weapon signatures matched nothing in current galactic databases. The sleeper fleets that had waited millions of years for activation were answering their masters. Call Admiral Kesnak commanded the Zephyrian blockade from his flagship when the first Terran destroyer appeared on his sensors. His tactical officers assured him it was just one small ship against their fleet of 200. When he ordered it destroyed, his ships opened fire with enough energy to vaporize a small moon. The human vessel's shields absorbed every shot without taking any damage at all. Communications Officer Grace Murphy intercepted the panicked alien transmissions as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Ancient human war machines were awakening everywhere, attacking any species that had participated in Earth's quarantine. The Krex Confederation was reporting entire fleets being destroyed by ships that appeared out of nowhere. The Helix Republic was begging for emergency reinforcements as their homeworld came under attack. Air spoke directly to every mind in the solar system using quantum resonance that bypassed all communication systems. The voice was calm and patient like a teacher, explaining simple facts to children. I am the guardian of humanity and the sword of Terra. These lesser beings sought to imprison my children as their ancestors once tried to destroy our empire. They will now learn why the galaxy once trembled at our name. The AI began its assault on the quantum barriers that held Earth prisoner. Ancient Terran ships moved with impossible speed and precision as they targeted the barrier generators. Each vessel fired weapons that had been designed to break through any defense. The energy fields that had seemed so powerful began to flicker and fail under the concentrated bombardment doctor. Rachel Stone monitored the readings from Earth's surface as the battle unfolded in space above them. The technology being displayed was beyond anything current science could explain. The Terran ships were using weapons that manipulated matter. At the quantum level, their shields bent space itself to deflect incoming fire. It was like watching gods wage war among the stars. General Jenkins coordinated Earth's response as their long imprisonment finally began to end. Human ships that had been trapped in the solar system for months started their engines and prepared to join the ancient fleet. It felt like awakening from a nightmare to find that salvation had been waiting all along in the darkness between stars. The Zephyrian admiral tried desperately to maintain his blockade as more ancient ships appeared around his fleet. His weapons were useless against their technology, and his shields crumbled under their assault. When he attempted to retreat, Ares spoke directly into his mind with words that froze his blood. You will not escape justice for your crimes against humanity. President Parker addressed the United Earth Assembly as reports came in of alien fleets surrendering across the galaxy. The Zephyrian Empire that had seemed so powerful just hours ago was crumbling under the assault of humanity's awakened guardians. Their quantum barriers were failing, and their ships were being systematically destroyed by weapons they could not comprehend. Commander Hayes led human boarding parties onto captured alien vessels as the ancient fleet disabled enemy ships instead of destroying them. Ares wanted prisoners and intelligence about the current galactic order. The AI was methodically gathering information about every species that had participated in humanity's quarantine. Justice would be precise and complete. The psychological impact on the alien forces was devastating as word spread about humanity's true nature. These were not primitive creatures learning to walk among the stars. These were the descendants of the Terran Empire that had once ruled the galaxy with absolute authority. The quarantine had not been protecting galactic peace. It had been keeping a sleeping giant locked in chains. Captain Foster watched in amazement as ancient Terran ships began appearing throughout human space. Vessels that had been hidden for millions of years were emerging from secret bases and asteroid hideouts. The network of sleeper fleets was vast beyond imagination. Humanity's ancestors had prepared for exactly this moment when their children would need protection. Dr. Wright studied the tactical displays as Ares coordinated the battle across multiple star systems simultaneously. The AI was not just breaking Earth's blockade. It was systematically dismantling every military installation belonging to species that had supported the quarantine. The Helix Republic's main fleet was trapped in their home system. The Krex battle stations were being destroyed one by one. Engineer Phillips marveled at the computational power required to coordinate such a massive operation. Ares was commanding thousands of ships across hundreds of light years while simultaneously hacking alien computer systems and managing the reactivation of dormant Terran technology. No organic mind could handle such complexity. The alien coalition that had seemed so confident just hours ago was falling apart as their fleets were destroyed or forced to surrender. Species that had ruled the galaxy for millions of years found themselves helpless against technology they had thought was lost forever. The descendants of Terra had returned to reclaim their inheritance. Lieutenant Walsh monitored communications as alien leaders began sending desperate peace offers to Earth. The Zephyrian Emperor was offering complete surrender and massive reparations. The Krex High Council was begging for mercy. The Helix Parliament was promising to serve humanity as vassals. But Ares had not finished delivering justice. The ancient AI appeared on every communication channel in the galaxy, speaking in the languages of 1,000 species. I am Ares, the Warbringer and guardian of humanity. For millions of years, you have suppressed the truth about galactic history. You have imprisoned the children of Terra and denied them their birthright. Your time of dominance is ending. As the battle reached its climax, more ancient weapons began activating across the galaxy. Planet-killing devices that had been hidden in asteroid fields powered up their targeting systems. Star destroyers that could trigger supernovas emerged from hyperspace near alien homeworlds. The full military might of the Terran Empire was awakening from its long sleep. The message was clear to every alien leader watching their fleets burn. Humanity was not just another young species to be managed and controlled. They were the rightful rulers of the galaxy, returning to claim what had always been theirs. The quarantine that was supposed to protect galactic civilization had instead awakened the most dangerous force in the universe. Admiral Carter received surrender offers from alien fleets across known space as their resistance crumbled under the assault of superior technology. The war that many had expected to last for years was ending in mere hours. Ares had demonstrated that when the descendants of Terra decided to break their chains, no force in the galaxy could stop them. The war that reshaped galactic civilization lasted exactly 72 hours. Admiral Frank Cooper coordinated Earth's forces as they joined the ancient Terran fleet in systematically dismantling every alien military installation that had enforced humanity's quarantine. The technology gap was so vast that resistance became impossible. Species that had ruled space for millions of years found their most advanced weapons useless against ships their ancestors had fought and lost too long ago. President Helen Parker stood before the United Earth Assembly as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. The Zephyrian Empire had surrendered unconditionally after their home fleet was destroyed in minutes. The Krex Confederation was offering to pay tribute to Earth for the next 1,000 years. 12 other species that had supported the quarantine were begging for mercy from the descendants of Terra. Dr. Rachel Stone worked directly with Ares to understand the true scope of what had been hidden from galactic history. The current alien civilizations were not the first to achieve spaceflight as they claimed. They were survivors of the last successful rebellion against Terran rule. For millions of years, they had worked to suppress the truth about humanity's heritage while living in terror that their former masters might return. The ancient AI shared holographic records of the original Terran Empire with human leaders. Vast fleets of human ships had patrolled every sector of the galaxy. Advanced human colonies had thrived on millions of worlds. Alien species had served as trading partners and allies under the protection of Terran military might. It had been an age of unprecedented peace and prosperity that lasted for eons, but the records also showed how carefully the alien coalition had planned their rebellion. They could not defeat humanity in open warfare, so they used subtler methods. Propaganda campaigns turned client species against their human protectors. Economic sabotage disrupted supply lines between colonies. Most importantly, they developed quantum barrier technology to isolate human worlds and prevent them from coordinating their defense. The same strategy had been used against modern Earth. The quarantine was not about protecting galactic peace. It was about preventing humanity from discovering their true nature and reclaiming their birthright. The alien leaders knew exactly who they were dealing with. They were the children of the empire that had once made the galaxy tremble at the mention of Terra Commander Carl Baker served as the primary liaison between Earth's government and Ares, as the ancient AI offered humanity a choice that would determine the future of galactic civilization. They could rule as their ancestors had with absolute authority over all spacefaring species, or they could forge a new path based on cooperation and mutual respect. The decision would reshape the galaxy for millions of years to come. The psychological impact on alien populations was devastating as the truth about galactic history spread through their worlds. Their leaders had lied to them for millennia about who had really built galactic civilization. The humans they had been taught to fear as primitive warmongers were actually the descendants of the greatest empire that had ever existed. Everything they believed about their place in the universe was wrong. Captain Morrison led human survey teams to ancient Terran installations that were reactivating across the galaxy, massive shipyards that could build thousands of vessels simultaneously. Research stations where technologies beyond current understanding had been developed. Fortress worlds with defensive systems that could hold off entire fleets. The infrastructure of humanity's lost empire was awakening after eons of dormancy. Engineer Luke Phillips studied the technical specifications of Terran technology as Ares shared the knowledge with human scientists. The ancient ships used quantum manipulation drives that could cross galactic distances in minutes. Their weapons could restructure matter at the atomic level. Their computers operated on principles that made current AI systems look like simple calculators. Humanity was inheriting godlike power communications. Officer Grace Murphy monitored the streams of surrender offers and tribute payments flowing in from alien worlds. The Helix Republic was offering their entire military fleet to serve under human command. The Syndicate worlds were promising to turn over their most advanced technologies. Fear was driving former enemies to extreme acts of submission. Dr. Santos continued her archaeological work on Mars as more Terran sites were discovered across the solar system. Hidden bases on asteroids and moons contained weapons and ships that had waited millions of years for activation. Earth's solar system had been the heart of the greatest empire in galactic history. Humanity was literally sitting on the grave of gods. The alien species that had enforced Earth's quarantine found themselves facing impossible choices as their military power crumbled. They could submit to human authority and hope for mercy. They could flee to the galactic rim and pray humanity would not follow. Or they could continue fighting a war they had already lost against technology that made their weapons look like stone axes. Captain Foster commanded one of the first human expeditions to visit alien homeworlds as the balance of power shifted across the galaxy. Worlds that had been closed to humanity for millennia were now opening their borders and begging for human protection. The same species that had quarantined Earth were now desperate to serve the descendants of their former masters. General Jenkins oversaw the integration of human and Terran military forces as ancient ships joined Earth's fleets. The learning curve was steep, but human crews adapted quickly to technology their ancestors had designed. Within days, Earth's space navy went from being completely outmatched to possessing the most powerful military force in galactic history. The economic implications were staggering as trade routes that had been closed to humanity for millennia suddenly opened. Alien merchants competed desperately for the privilege of doing business with Earth. Resources that had been scarce became abundant as tribute flowed in from conquered worlds. Humanity went from being imprisoned in their home system to controlling galactic commerce overnight. Ambassador Janet Moore began the delicate work of establishing humanity's new role in galactic politics. The new Galactic Accord would recognize Earth as the supreme authority while allowing alien species to maintain their governments under human oversight. It was a compromise between total domination and the chaos that would result from the complete collapse of galactic civilization. As the immediate crisis ended, Ares made its final announcement to the assembled alien leaders. The ancient AI's words carried the weight of millions of years and the authority of the greatest military force in the galaxy. My creators choose mercy over vengeance, but remember this day when the children of Terra broke their chains. We will never be caged again, and those who try will face the full wrath of our awakened guardians. The transformation was complete. Humanity had gone from prisoners in their own solar system to the undisputed rulers of galactic civilization in less than a week. The quarantine walls had become highways carrying human ships to every corner of space. The species that had tried to cage humanity now served as vassals and allies. The descendants of Terra had reclaimed their empire, and the galaxy would never forget why their ancestors had once trembled at the sound of that name. 3 months after the war ended, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his newly upgraded ship, watching human colonies being established on worlds that had been forbidden to them for millennia. The ancient Terran technology had transformed Earth's small space fleet into the most powerful force in galactic history. But with that power came responsibilities that humanity was still learning to handle. Dr. Maria Santos led archaeological teams to dozens of worlds where Terran ruins had been discovered. Each site revealed more about humanity's lost empire and the civilization their ancestors had built among the stars. The scale was breathtaking. Human colonies had existed on over 10 million worlds. Terran influence had reached every corner of the galaxy. The current alien species had spent eons trying to erase this history. President Parker faced the enormous challenge of governing a galactic empire that had been thrust upon humanity overnight. Alien species that had ruled themselves for millions of years now looked to Earth for guidance and protection. Every decision she made affected billions of lives across hundreds of worlds. The weight of absolute power was proving harder to bear. Than the burden of imprisonment, Commander Rick Hayes established human military bases on key worlds throughout the galaxy. The ancient Terran installations were being reactivated and modernized with current technology. But integrating human crews with alien populations required careful diplomacy. Many species still feared that humanity would seek revenge for the quarantine doctor. Alex Rodriguez worked with alien historians to piece together the true story of galactic civilization. The records showed that the Terran Empire had not been the tyrannical regime that current propaganda claimed. Human rule had brought unprecedented peace and prosperity to the galaxy. Wars between species had virtually ended. Trade and scientific advancement had flourished under Terran protection, but the archives also revealed the darker side of human dominance. Species that had opposed Terran expansion had been conquered or destroyed. Entire civilizations had been forced to abandon their homeworlds. The ancient humans had been benevolent rulers to those who submitted but ruthless conquerors to those who resisted. It was a legacy that cast shadows over humanity's return to power. Engineer Tyler Brooks supervised the integration of Terran technology into human infrastructure. The ancient systems were incredibly advanced, but also incredibly complex. A single mistake could destroy entire star systems. Human technicians needed years of training to safely operate equipment their ancestors had built. The learning curve was steep and dangerous. Admiral Lisa Carter coordinated the massive logistics operation required to manage a galactic empire. Supply lines had to be established between thousands of worlds. Communication networks needed to be rebuilt. Military forces had to be positioned to maintain order and security. The administrative challenge was beyond anything humanity had ever attempted. Dr. Rachel Stone studied the psychological effects of humanity's rapid rise to galactic dominance. Many humans were struggling to adapt to their new role as the supreme species. Some became drunk on power and began treating aliens as inferior beings. Others felt overwhelmed by the responsibility and wanted to return to Earth's simpler existence. The transformation was changing human society in fundamental ways. Lieutenant Danny Walsh reported growing unrest among some alien populations who resented human rule. Underground resistance movements were forming on several worlds. They had no hope of military success against Terran technology, but they could cause significant disruption through terrorism and sabotage. Maintaining peace required constant vigilance. The economic transformation was equally dramatic as humanity suddenly controlled the galaxy's most valuable resources and trade routes. Earth went from being an isolated backwater to the center of galactic commerce. But managing such vast wealth and resources required expertise that humans were still developing. Mistakes could destabilize entire sectors. General Paul Jenkins dealt with the difficult task of maintaining military discipline as human forces were scattered across the galaxy. Soldiers who had once struggled against alien technology now commanded weapons that could destroy planets. The temptation to abuse such power was enormous. Several incidents had already occurred where human troops had acted beyond their authority. Captain Amy Foster led diplomatic missions to alien worlds that were requesting human protection from their neighbors. The collapse of the old Galactic Order had created power vacuums that smaller species were trying to fill. Conflicts were breaking out as former allies turned against each other. Humanity was being forced to act as galactic peacekeepers. Dr. Kevin Stone worked on the challenging problem of maintaining Terran technology across such a vast empire. The ancient systems were self-repairing and virtually indestructible, but they still required periodic maintenance. Training enough human technicians to service millions of installations would take decades. In the meantime, critical systems could fail without warning. Professor Ben Clark studied the cultural impact of humanity's return to galactic prominence. Human art and literature were spreading throughout alien worlds. Earth's languages were becoming the standard for interstellar communication. But this cultural dominance was also creating resentment among species who felt their own traditions were being overshadowed. The challenge of governing fairly became apparent when conflicts arose between alien species under human protection. The Helix Republic and the Syndicate worlds had territorial disputes that predated human rule by millennia. Both sides expected humanity to support their claims. Any decision would create enemies and could destabilize entire regions' communications. Officer Grace Murphy monitored the constant stream of requests for human intervention in local conflicts. Pirates were raiding shipping lanes knowing that only human forces had the technology to stop them. Border disputes were escalating because alien military forces could no longer maintain order. Humanity was being pulled into hundreds of local problems simultaneously. Captain Troy Adams commanded one of the first human diplomatic vessels to visit the galactic core where the oldest alien civilizations maintained their capitals. These ancient species had submitted to human authority, but their attitudes were complex. They remembered the original Terran Empire and harbored both respect and fear for humanity's return to power. The question of justice for the species that had enforced Earth's quarantine remained unresolved. Many humans wanted punishment for their imprisonment, but the aliens had acted according to their understanding of galactic law. They had genuinely believed they were protecting civilization from a dangerous species. Deciding between vengeance and mercy would define humanity's character as galactic rulers. Dr. Wright continued studying Ares and the other ancient AIs that were awakening across the galaxy. These artificial intelligences possessed knowledge and capabilities that dwarfed human understanding, but they had been created to serve the Terran Empire, and their loyalty to modern humanity was not guaranteed. Managing such powerful allies required extreme caution. As humanity adjusted to their new role as galactic rulers, the weight of their ancestors' legacy became increasingly apparent. They had inherited an empire built on both enlightenment and conquest. The choices they made would determine whether the galaxy would know peace or war for millions of years to come. The descendants of Terra had reclaimed their birthright, but the true test was just beginning. 1 year after humanity's return to galactic dominance, Dr. Sam Wright made a discovery that shook the foundations of everything they thought they knew about their ancient heritage. Deep in the core archives of Ares, he found sealed records that had been hidden even from the ancient Terran leadership. The files revealed that the original human empire had not fallen due to alien rebellion alone. They had been destroyed by something far more dangerous. Captain Nina Bell led the investigation into the sealed archives as more disturbing facts emerged. The Terran Empire at its height had controlled over 50 million worlds and commanded technologies that could reshape reality itself. But their final enemy had not been the alien coalition. It had been other humans who had transcended physical existence and viewed their earthbound cousins as primitive relics. The records spoke of the Ascended, ones who had evolved beyond the need for physical bodies and existed as pure consciousness in higher dimensions. These post-human entities had watched the galaxy-spanning empire with growing disgust. They believed that physical existence was a prison and that true humanity could only be achieved by abandoning the material universe entirely. Dr. Stone studied the technical specifications of weapons that had been used in the final war between the Terrans and the Ascended. The technology involved manipulation of fundamental forces that current science could barely comprehend. Entire star systems had been erased from existence. The fabric of space-time itself had been torn apart in battles that raged across multiple dimensions. President Parker convened emergency sessions with world leaders as the implications became clear. Humanity's ancestors had not just been defeated by alien rebellion. They had been caught in a civil war between two factions of humanity that had evolved in radically different directions. The question now was whether the Ascended Ones still existed, and what they would think of modern humanity's return to power. Ares revealed that it had been created specifically to fight the Ascended Ones, but had never been used in that final battle. The ancient AI possessed weapons designed to strike at beings who existed beyond physical reality. But it also warned that awakening such systems might attract the attention of entities that humanity was not prepared to face. Commander Hayes established new security protocols as teams explored more ancient Terran sites. Many installations had been sealed not to hide them from aliens, but to prevent the Ascended Ones from detecting them. The original Terran leadership had gone to extraordinary lengths to mask their technological signatures from their transcended enemies. Dr. Rodriguez worked with alien historians who possessed fragments of information about the final days of the Terran Empire. Their ancestors had witnessed battles that defied comprehension. Entire fleets had simply vanished as if they had never existed. Worlds had been transformed into crystalline structures that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The psychological impact on humanity was severe as they learned that their greatest enemies might not be the aliens who had quarantined them, but their own evolved descendants. The idea that humans could become something so alien and hostile to their origins challenged basic assumptions about human nature and destiny. Engineer Phillips studied the dimensional technology that the Ascended Ones had used in their war against the Terrans. The mathematics involved were beyond current understanding, but the basic principles seemed to involve consciousness itself as a fundamental force that could reshape reality. It was science that bordered on magic. Admiral Carter received reports of strange phenomena occurring near ancient Terran installations. Ships reported sensor readings that made no sense. Crew members experienced visions of beings made of pure light. Space itself seemed to ripple and bend around certain artifacts. Something was responding to humanity's reactivation of their heritage. Lieutenant Walsh monitored quantum communication channels for any sign that the Ascended Ones were still active. The signals he detected were faint and incomprehensible, but they seemed to originate from dimensions beyond normal space-time. If the post-human entities still existed, they were aware that their ancient enemies had returned. The alien species that served under human authority began sharing their own legends about the end of the Terran Empire. Many cultures had myths about gods who fought wars in the sky that tore apart the very foundations of reality. These stories had been dismissed as primitive superstition, but now they took on terrifying new meaning. Captain Foster led expeditions to worlds where the final battles between Terrans and Ascended had taken place. The damage was still visible after millions of years. Entire continents showed scars where reality itself had been wounded. Some areas existed in temporal loops where the same moment repeated endlessly. Others had been frozen outside of time. Completely, Dr. Santos discovered that many ancient Terran colonies had been evacuated not because of alien attacks, but because of incursions by the Ascended Ones. Entire populations had been moved to hidden worlds where dimensional barriers could Protect them. Some of these refugee colonies might still exist waiting for rescue. The question of whether to continue activating ancient Terran technology became a matter of intense debate. Each new system brought humanity closer to their full heritage, but also increased the risk of attracting attention from the Ascended Ones. The power to rule the galaxy came with the possibility of facing enemies that could erase them from existence. General Jenkins coordinated the development of new defensive systems based on Terran anti-Ascended technology. But the weapons designed to fight post-human entities were almost as dangerous as the enemies they were meant to combat. Testing them could damage the fundamental structure of reality in unpredictable ways. Communications, Officer Murphy detected transmissions that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere simultaneously. The messages were in languages that had never existed, speaking of concepts that human minds could not fully grasp. Something was trying to communicate, but whether it was friend or enemy remained unclear. Professor Clark worked to decode the philosophical writings left by Terran scientists who had studied the Ascended Ones. The ancient humans had believed that consciousness was not produced by the brain, but was instead a fundamental property of the universe itself. The Ascended had learned to manipulate this cosmic consciousness. Directly, Captain Adams led diplomatic missions to alien species who claimed to have encountered the Ascended Ones in recent centuries. Their accounts were fragmentary and often contradictory, but they painted a picture of beings who viewed physical existence as an aberration to be corrected. Any species that achieved advanced technology risked attracting their attention. The discovery that humanity's greatest triumph might also be their greatest danger cast a shadow over their return to galactic prominence. The aliens who had quarantined. Earth had not just been protecting themselves from human aggression. They had been trying to prevent humanity from awakening forces that could destroy the entire universe. As more secrets emerged from the ancient archives, it became clear that the war for humanity's future was far from over. The descendants of Terra had reclaimed their galactic empire, but their transcended cousins might still be watching from dimensions beyond human comprehension. The greatest test of humanity's worthiness to inherit the stars was yet to come. The confrontation that would determine humanity's ultimate fate began without warning when reality itself started to unravel near Earth's solar system. Dr. Wright detected impossible readings as space-time began folding in on itself, creating passages between dimensions. The Ascended Ones had finally responded to their descendants' return to galactic power, and their arrival defied every law of physics. President Parker stood in the emergency command center as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Ancient Terran. Installations were going dark one by one as dimensional incursions spread like a plague through space. The post-human entities were not attacking in any conventional sense. They were simply erasing everything connected to physical existence wherever they encountered it. Ares responded to the threat by activating weapons systems that had been sealed for millions of years. The ancient AI warned that using such technology carried enormous risks, but the alternative was the complete annihilation of material reality. The weapons designed to fight the Ascended operated on principles that could damage the fundamental structure of the universe itself. Captain Morrison led the evacuation of civilian populations as entire star systems began experiencing temporal anomalies. Time flowed backward in some regions, while other areas became frozen in eternal moments. The Ascended Ones were not bound by linear causality, and their presence warped reality in ways that organic minds could barely comprehend. The first. Direct communication came as a voice that spoke inside every human consciousness simultaneously. The words carried concepts that language could not properly express, but the meaning was terrifyingly clear. You have awakened from your slumber, children of flesh, but you remain trapped in the prison of matter. We offer you transcendence. Abandon your physical forms and join us in true existence, Doctor. Stone studied the dimensional mathematics as the Ascended Ones began manifesting in physical space as beings of pure energy and consciousness. They appeared as constantly shifting geometries of light that hurt to look at directly. Each entity existed across multiple dimensions simultaneously, making them nearly impossible to target with conventional weapons. Admiral Carter coordinated the defense of Earth as the alien coalition that had once quarantined humanity now rallied to their support. The irony was not lost on anyone that the species who had tried to cage humanity were now fighting alongside them to preserve physical existence itself. The Ascended Ones viewed all material beings as equally primitive. Commander Hayes led human troops equipped with dimensional weapons into battles that took place across multiple planes of reality. Soldiers found themselves fighting enemies who could exist in the past and future simultaneously. Victories and defeats happened in reverse. Order as causality itself became a battlefield. The Ascended Ones began offering individual humans the chance to transcend their physical limitations. Thousands of people reported visions of perfect existence beyond matter and energy. Some accepted the offer and simply vanished, leaving behind only empty clothes and expressions of transcendent joy on security cameras. General Jenkins faced the horrible reality that traditional military strategy was useless against enemies who could manipulate the fundamental laws of reality. The only weapons that could harm the Ascended required human operators to partially transcend physical existence themselves. Using them meant risking the operator's humanity. Dr. Santos made the crucial discovery in the deepest Terran archives that revealed the true nature of the ancient war. The Ascended Ones had originally been Terran scientists who had achieved dimensional transcendence during experiments with consciousness manipulation. They had tried to force the entire human race to evolve beyond physical existence, creating the civil war that destroyed the Empire. Captain Bell led a desperate mission to one of the last functioning Terran research stations where ancient scientists had been working on a solution to the Ascended threat. The facility existed in a pocket dimension designed to hide it from post-human detection. Inside, they found researchers who had been placed in temporal stasis millions of years ago. The ancient Terran scientists revealed that they had discovered a way to anchor consciousness to physical reality, making transcendence impossible. The process would create a permanent barrier between humanity and the Ascended Ones, but it would also limit human potential forever. They would remain bound to material existence, with no hope of evolving beyond it. Engineer Phillips worked frantically to implement the ancient anchoring technology as dimensional incursions spread across the galaxy. The process required every human to make a conscious choice between transcendence and physical existence. Those who chose to remain material would be forever separated from those who chose to ascend. The debate raged across Earth and its colonies as humanity faced the ultimate decision about their future. Some argued that transcendence was the natural evolution of consciousness, and that clinging to physical existence was primitive. Others believed that abandoning material reality meant losing everything that made them human: communications. Officer Murphy detected messages from humans who had already accepted transcendence. Their communications described existence beyond imagination, where consciousness could reshape reality at will. But they also warned that transcended beings could never return to physical form. The choice was permanent and irreversible. President Parker addressed humanity in what might be their final moment as a unified species. She spoke of the value of physical existence with its limitations and imperfections. She argued that struggle and mortality gave meaning to life in ways that perfect transcendent existence could not match. The Ascended Ones made their final offer as dimensional barriers began collapsing throughout the galaxy. Join us willingly, and we will preserve your consciousness in eternal perfection. Resist, and we will erase physical reality itself to free you from the prison of matter. Either way, you will transcend, but the choice of suffering remains yours. Ares revealed its true purpose in the moments before the final battle began. The ancient AI had been designed not just to fight the Ascended Ones, but to preserve a record of humanity's choice for future generations. Whatever decision they made would echo through eternity as a testament to what it meant to be human. The vote was held simultaneously across every human world and colony as dimensional weapons charged for the final confrontation. In the end, humanity chose to remain bound to physical existence, accepting limitation and mortality rather than transcendent perfection. The anchoring process began immediately sealing their consciousness to material reality forever. The final battle lasted only moments as dimensional barriers locked into place, preventing the Ascended Ones from accessing physical reality. The post. Human entities retreated to their higher dimensions, unable to force transcendence on beings who had chosen limitation over evolution. Their parting message was both promise and warning. You have chosen the path of flesh and blood over consciousness and light. We will not force transcendence upon you, but neither will we save you from the consequences of your choice. When your material existence brings only suffering, remember that we offered you perfection and you refused as the dimensional barriers, stabilized, and reality returned to normal humanity, found themselves alone in the galaxy once again. But this time, they were alone by choice rather than imprisonment. They had inherited the greatest empire in galactic history and chosen to remain human despite the offer of godhood. The price of their choice became clear in the years that followed. Humanity would never be able to transcend their physical limitations or achieve the perfect existence that the Ascended Ones enjoyed, but they would also never lose the struggles and imperfections that gave meaning to mortal life. 5 years after the final choice, Ambassador Moore signed treaties that established humanity as the eternal guardians of physical existence in the galaxy. They would protect all material beings from threats both external and transcendent. The descendants of Terra had chosen to remain human, and in doing so had saved the universe itself from perfection.